All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Shachar, and I'm the chief storyteller at Playbuzz. And lucky for you, I have a really good story to tell you today. Let's go. So, my story starts in the 16th century. And with this yellow, kind of sad, right? A lot of text on it, piece of paper. This is what an article looked like in the 16th century, not long after print was invented. Here's another thing that existed in the 16th century, but doesn't necessarily make much sense today. I hope you agree with me. There weren't much running water back then, 500 years ago, but that's definitely a problem that we have dealt with, and we figured it out by now, so don't have that problem anymore. However, if you look at what articles look like today, it's not that different than what it looked like back in the 16th century, 500 years ago. Not even just the print version of the article, but the digital version as well. And this is what 90% of online content looks like today. There's a headline, there's a bunch of text paragraphs, maybe a few images, but there's not really a lot of elements that use the fact that we're consuming content on mobile devices, that we can interact with it. It's pretty similar to what we could have done on paper. However, while articles haven't changed that much, the way we consume content has shifted drastically. And I think this image is a really good proof of that. And I want to say, if this does not look familiar to someone sitting here, then please leave the room. I mean, this is just not for you. Because we consume content in a very different way than we did even 10 years ago or even a year ago. We, again, consume it on mobile devices. We're really distracted. We're getting text from mom or a Slack message from our boss as we're reading it. We are expecting it to be a lot more interactive. We're used to clicking and swiping and doing a lot of activities as we consume content. And that means that the publishing industry has to adapt to these new content consumption habits. So if articles are not changing, we at Playbuzz want to suggest 3 ways in which they could change in order to make them more exciting for today's readers. One is visual-first content. So instead of that bunch of text paragraphs that people passively scroll through, let's add visuals into them and break them up in interesting ways. Let's add interactivity, make the user active when they're consuming content. And let's look at different engagement KPIs for how we measure the success of this content. Not just page views. They're not necessarily the best way to measure whether our content was consumed in a great way or not. And let's dive a little deeper into that. If we're saying the publishing industry has to adapt, the New York Times are actually, agreeing with us on that because they just published this report that looks into the workflow of how they create content. And, they're the legacy publisher. They are the authority on this. And even they are saying too much of our content has just text and long strings of text. Maybe they can add things to it that will break that up a little bit. And some of you may be thinking, is virtual reality the answer to that? And I want to say it's not yet, at least. Even though it's all the rage and all the big tech companies are investing in this technology, as it is today, publishers are not really able to, have their users put on a headset and disconnect from reality every time they want to read a piece of news. Maybe it will be in the future, but today it's just not the best solution. And that's where Playbuzz comes in. We have a storytelling platform that publishers, brands, anyone who wants to create content can use in order to make their content more engaging, more interactive, and break the text paragraphs with elements that are exciting, like videos, like questions that the user can answer, and a lot of other elements that keep the user engaged and interacting with the content. Here are a few examples of what it looks like in real life, and you can see that, again, text paragraphs are broken with text message-like text, and videos, and GIFs, and elements that are a lot more exciting than that 16th century article. Because if you break your content into slices, it becomes a lot more digestible. I think the New York Times really hit the nail on the head with this one because, again, from the same report that I was talking about before, they are saying readers need to be a bigger part of our content. And that means they need to be active in the journey of the consumption. They can't just, again, passively scroll through paragraphs of text. They want to be engaged. They want something that's personal to them, that's interesting. And it doesn't mean that all content needs to be, like Snapchat and have unicorn puke and dog ears and funny, pink images of Homer Simpson. We can learn a lot from that content, by the way, about how users like their content interactive and with motion and broken into small pieces of engagement. But it doesn't mean it has to be shallow. It can still be very meaningful. And again, this is where the Playbuzz platform offers publishers or anyone who wants to tell a story to create content that the user can click to flip a card or swipe or answer a question and be interactive as they're consuming it. And when the content is very immersive, these things tend to happen. And by the way, this is me. Like, this happens to me every day. Very dangerous. I'm going to be a little less politically correct than the New York Times in this quote and say that as far as measuring their success, publishers have become slaves to the impression-based monetization model. They measure their success by how many people clicked into their articles. And that's not necessarily the best way to look at it, because if someone clicked in and clicked out 2 seconds after, it's not necessarily what we're creating great content for. And I think if you all think of when was the last time you read an article all the way through from beginning to end, it doesn't happen that often. And it's not what publishers really need, and it's not what their advertisers are looking for. Their ads are not being interacted with, and they're not even being seen. And it doesn't mean that clickbait is the answer, because again, when we're measuring ourselves with page views, we can just create a really great clickbait headline that will shock you, and then millions of people are going to click it, but again, bounce out 2 seconds after. But if we measure ourselves based on real engagement KPIs, like how much time did they spend on the content, or did they actually engage with it, we will know really what they liked and what they didn't like about what we're created. And that's what you get by using the Playbuzz platform. Your content is broken up into pieces where you can measure how your users engage with each and every section of the article. You can see where they clicked, where they stopped scrolling, how long did they spend, are they completing the article, did they share it? These are metrics that really matter. And you can also ask your audience questions and learn about them. What do they like? What are they interested in? These can be very valuable for brands, creating branded content that is engaging. And this is not just a way to learn about your audience, it's also a way to improve your content for them and optimize it. And I think there's no better way to summarize it by saying the internet is brutal to mediocrity. The New York Times knows it, and we know it. People have so much content that's presented to them every day. They will choose only good content and run away from mediocre ones. And this is why over 13,000 publishers are choosing to use Playbuzz every month to create interactive and engaging content for their audience that really engages them. And they create it on our platform, they embed it on their site, and then they analyze it and optimize it to fit their audience and create amazing, engaging articles that their users really care about. But why would I do the bragging when all these facts can just do a much better job than I can? So over 500 million users are interacting with Playbuzz-powered content every month in over 40 different languages. The metrics that you see from that content are completion rates of over 90% and very high share rates and an average of 2-minute dwell time in your session. And that is compared to an average of about 20 seconds that is common in the industry. So on an average non-engaging article, people will spend around 20 seconds. 20 seconds. That's what they're willing to invest when they don't really have content that's exciting for them, that kind of looks like that 16th century article. But when it's engaging, it's a whole different story. And thank you so much for spending 10 whole minutes with me today.